Hello. Um, this is a kind of an impromptu recording. I don't have enough uh, space on my phone to record a video, and I'm too lazy to delete a bunch of stuff right now. Um, so I'll have to make do with a voice recording. But um, what I wanted to talk about is a topic that I return to pretty frequently, and that's free will. Um, I'm sure I've made at least a couple videos about it, either directly related to it or where it was a topic of interest, or connected to another topic. And I think I wanted to talk about it because, one reason for this channel is for me to document my growth, my development, my life, my views, my worldview. And I think I've changed my mind on free will, but in a way that's going to seem kind of lame and almost like not even worth talking about. It could seem like not really a change of mind at all, because I probably still think to some degree like a determinist. But what I want to try to demonstrate today is that the only rational position on free will is free will agnosticism. The only rational position on free will is to say, we don't know if we have free will, and quite possibly we will never know. So, since my probably teens, I've been banging this free will drum for a long time, actually. And I've even made some people angry about it. Some people get pretty hostile when you say that free will doesn't exist. And I mean, I was arguing that we don't have free will for the longest time, because I think in large part it was actually, I read Sam Harris's short book on the subject. I don't remember if that was if that was the straw that broke the camel's back or what, but he talks about how, I think, wasn't it one of the first school shootings was, I think, in a school in Texas in the 60s, sorry. Because there was a clock tower, I want to say, he was shooting people from a clock tower. Earlier in that day, he killed his wife and his mom or something, mother-in-law. I don't remember. But it was found that he had a tumor, a brain tumor, and this was what was causing his destructive and erratic actions. And he apparently had written a suicide note saying, "Please do an autopsy on me. I don't know why I killed my wife," etc., etc. So even he was apparently aware of that, interestingly enough. So there's that. There's there's lots of instances where you can kind of point to an external force, more than or less dictating your actions. You snapped at your wife because you didn't get enough sleep last night, or your toddler had a meltdown in Walmart because they hadn't eaten enough. So, or we become the people we are because because of things that happened in our childhood, a la Freud, because of our relationships with our parents and our brothers and or in our siblings and just early childhood experiences can cause phobias or mental disorders or just our personality. I think there is some there are some studies with how with personality and birth order. How you can have different personalities depending on your birth order. Okay, so how should I put this? I think that's all pretty convincing. At the same time, I haven't heard a good definition of what free will is. There is... So there's the definition of, I guess, which would be the ability to have done otherwise, I think. So I chose vanilla ice cream when I could have chosen vanilla. I chose to ask Brian out on a date when I could have chosen to ask Joe out. Things like that. I don't know why I had to specify with examples like that, but you know what I mean. And so that's one definition. I think determinists generally have put forward that definition. If you're, I suppose, a compatibilist of some flavor, you might put, how would a compatibilist define free will? Something to the effect of, you just have some, I guess, influence, or so you don't have to you don't have to have determined your actions, but if your actions sort of came from you in a minor respect, even if at some cosmic level they came from quarks bouncing in a certain way or something, that's a good enough definition of free will. The origin of the action was, I guess, to some degree, both determined by external factors, but also caused by something within you. So I'm trying to think of some hypothetical example. No, I think on the Very Bad Wizards podcast, when they had Sam Harris on actually they had Sam Harris on to talk about free will twice, but they kept talking about drunk driving, a drunk driving case, as a hypothetical. So let's see. Let me see if I can apply a compatibilism to a drunk driver case. So I guess, if determinism is true, then, if you drink and drive and hit a 6-year-old with your Jeep, you were determined to do that. For the beginning of the universe determined the moment when you hit little Sally with your Jeep, and mangled her legs. So However, you have a degree of control in that scenario. So, you can, you could, bring a friend with you out drinking and have them be the designated driver. You could call a taxi. You could call an Uber. And assuming, you went to, most public schools, they probably had, police officers or something come to visit you to talk about drunk, or someone, to come to talk to you about the dangers of drinking and driving and why you shouldn't do it. So, you have the knowledge that drinking and driving is dangerous. And there's always these options for transportation available to you. And so that is an instance where you have some degree of control. Again, maybe the control is a little more, I guess that's sort of an if. I don't know how I never entirely understood compatibilism, to be frank with you. I apologize to any compatibilists listening. But I think I'm partly having trouble explaining it because I feel like they're having their cake and eating it too. I don't really know how they understand this idea of control or responsibility or choice. But again, point being is there is a way in which I guess you can attempt to finesse, external factors having an influence on you, but you having some agency. Again, with the drinking case, it's I've yeah, I guess I think I've talked enough about that case. But there are options available to us. There are choices, different choices we can make. No one's denying that. No one's denying that people make choices, right? Not even a hard determinist denies that we make choices. And so, in certain cases, it seems to a compatibilist that you can influence those choices more than others. I think Daniel Dennett, in his conversation with Sam Harris, Sam Harris is getting name dropped a lot here. In Daniel Dennett's conversation with Sam Harris on free will, I think he uses the example of contracts. He said that, he was asked, he needed to sign some contract. He was asked, do you sign this of your own free will? And he said, yes, I do. And he explained to Sam Harris why he was using that as an example of free will, and that's because there are people not competent enough, or they lack the cognitive capacity to sign a contract. We don't like children, or not even just cognitive capacity, a 2-year-old can't sign a contract, right? They don't have that. We don't give them that legal power because they don't have the reasoning skills by which to understand contracts. So, yeah, that's actually a very good compatibilist example. Because it shows some degree of control, even, or some degree of difference, I guess, between people, which could illustrate a freedom in a sense. Someone who has the freedom to has the freedom, meaning the capacity to sign a contract, and versus someone who does not have the freedom or the capacity to sign a contract. Okay, so so how did I get from denying free will to I don't know if I have free will or not? And well, part of it was I took a seminar in epistemology, and we talked a lot in that class about skepticism. That was sort of the class's main focus. I mean, we talked about a lot of we talked about anti-skeptics too, but the core of the class was skepticism. Like I wrote a paper on Pyrrhonian versus academic skepticism. I wrote a paper on what I thought the most persuasive form of skepticism was and why. But, you know, the after taking that seminar, I can say that I became more skeptical. I can say that I began to question certain... I began to question my knowledge about certain things. So the Pyrrhonians, they kind of separate the world between like the skeptics and the dogmatists. Dogmatists being anyone who makes an affirming statement, who affirms propositions, who says, I know something, I have truth in some way, shape, or form. They even include the academic skeptics in that, because the academic skeptic says, you know, we know nothing. And the Pyrrhonian is like, how can you know that you know nothing? Then you know something. Get wrecked, son. Therefore, we can't even say that we know nothing. We must suspend judgment on all things. You know. So, now, between the two, I tend to lean more in the academic direction, because the academics, and it sounds kind of like a little silly in a way, they talk about like, you know, something that is truth-like. Basically, I don't think they use this language, but you know, you could frame an academic skepticism in terms of like probability, because an academic would still hold beliefs. They would say they don't know X, Y, or Z, but they believe X, Y, or Z because X, Y, or Z makes the most sense. It seems the most likely. If they had to, you know, bet their money on something, they would bet it on da-da-da-da-da. That's at least how I was interpreting academic versus Pyrrhonian skepticism. The academic makes room for belief as at least, you know, some beliefs as at least more likely than others. The Pyrrhonian says we can't know. Any belief is more or less likely than others, so we have to suspend belief about everything, and live our life primarily guided by custom, just to make things easier. And just because, you know, well, if custom has existed for thousands of years, then, or hundreds of years, then there must be something to it. So like I said, I think I think it's a better attitude to have towards beliefs, because I don't think, we're going to be getting rid of our beliefs anytime soon. Even if, we assumed the Peronians were right and there would be no way to distinguish between any beliefs whatsoever, I don't think we can get rid of our beliefs. Now, I don't actually think my teacher disagrees with that. I think my teacher disagreed with that interpretation. So again, I don't know, Peronists out there, forgive me, but that's at least my limited understanding of the topic. But I do think there are certain things that we should suspend our beliefs on. So I'm connecting back to free will here. I think we should suspend our belief on free will. Now, why should we? I'm reminded, I guess, of the work of David Hume, the 18th century Scottish philosopher. And one interesting thing Hume says is we can't know that causation is something that exists outside the mind. He says this because when you hit a bowling ball, when one billiard ball, not bowling ball, when one billiard ball hits another billiard ball, and the billiard ball that gets hit gets flung off the table. We say in common speech, the first bowling ball hitting the second bowling ball. I keep saying bowling ball. The first billiard ball hitting the second billiard ball caused the second billiard ball to go flying off the table. But we didn't see causation. Sounds ridiculous, but what Hume's getting at is you just see one event following another event. And you're inferring the causation. For all we know, a magical fairy had waved its magic wand, an invisible magical fairy, let's say, waved its wand, pulling the second billiard ball over, and it had nothing to do with pulled the second billiard ball over, causing it to fly off the table. Had nothing to do with the first billiard ball hitting it. That's just something that happened at the same time, coincidentally. That's a silly example, but it gets at the point. Causation is not something that is seen. Because, not because. Causation is something that isn't seen, and it's always possible there are causations which we do not see. We are limited in our perceptions, in our perspective. That's an uncontroversial thing to say. So great. We can't see causation, or we can't know that causation is a thing. Without causation, that makes determinism, that does call determinism into question. Because determinism um, you know, at or because determinism is the idea that everything has a cause, basically, and those causes, everything that happens is just a series of causes. The Big Bang was, first cause. We don't know what caused the Big Bang. Don't ask. And there was a cause after cause after cause after cause that led to me recording a audio file on my iPhone about free will. A direct link. A far off cause, but still a cause. And of course the determinist would also say we don't have free will because we don't cause our behavior, right? Our behavior is caused by other things that we don't control. So we can't be free. We are puppets to the universe, because it is the universe causing us to do these things. But we can't know, I would say. I think humans are right. I think causation is just something we sort of infer. And again, it makes sense. You can't see the world without inferring causation, I don't think. Perhaps, I was going to say perhaps physicists and chemists could explain this to me in a deeper way. But, even the natural sciences are just based on our sense perceptions, which are constructed by our brains. And so once again, science is just a reflection of the human mind. Math, the arts, all these are just reflections of the human mind that created them. I just said math was created by the human mind. What a controversial thing to say. We're going to skip that. We're going to make a controversial statement and let it go. Leave an angry comment down below if it bothers you so. I don't mind. Okay, so causation, I think, is into question as a fundamental building, as something fundamental to reality. It could exist outside our mind. It might not, and we can't know. And if we can't know that causation exists, then it's hard to know that determinism is true. The determinist often says that if you rewound the universe, or say, let's just simplify it. If you rewound your life, that's a hard word to say. If you rewound your life, everything would happen exactly the same. Everything, every bit, every decision, every action, every time you blink your eyes, it's all going to happen the same. And if you did that 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000,000 times, it would all wind up the same. We can't know that. Obvious to say, we can't know that would happen. Because we simply can't rewound our life. We can't rewound the universe to see if the universe would end up being any different. It is literally just impossible for us. So it's hard for me to argue now that I should base an argument against free will on the idea that if I rewound my life, it would happen the same way it did, when I have no way of doing that, and therefore no way of really knowing that. I mean, I can't go back, right? I can't return to when I was 2, 5. So it seems, here's another thing. Yeah, experientially, you could argue the world can seem deterministic because looking back at our life, it seems like one event led to another event, led to another event, da-da-da-da-da, led to this moment. But, again, that experience could be wrong. Maybe the universe is totally random. Maybe it's all randomness all the way down. And it just, our brain's just sort of making connections, making inferences to where it seems when we rewind the movie of our lives in our head, it seems like this caused this, when no, it's just totally random and there was no, really rationality to any of it. Hard to grasp, but it's possible. The universe doesn't have to be rational. The universe doesn't have to make sense. Okay, so we don't know causation is real. We don't know that if we rewind our lives that they would happen the same as they always did. We don't know we're puppets of the universe, in other words. I would throw the pendulum back around, therefore, and say we also don't know the opposites. We don't know... So in other words, we don't know that we're free either. Because, like I said, while I don't know the universe is deterministic, I don't know it's not. It could be deterministic. Or if it's just totally random, if it is randomness all the way down, well, yeah. If it's randomness all the way down, it doesn't really get you free will either. But anyway, what was I trying to say? Oh yeah, I don't know why. To some degree, I don't know why I put it like this. To some degree, I don't know why I or other people do. I don't know why I do what I do necessarily. I don't know why other people do what they do necessarily. Like I don't know. Putting on the causation glasses again, assuming causation is a thing, which maybe we shouldn't. I don't know what causes someone's behavior. Could be a brain tumor. Could be a random event. Could be a determined event. I don't know. And you never really do. You can't really distinguish between, what you can't really. It's hard to distinguish between, behavior and say, we don't know why this happened. We know why this happened. We barely understand human behavior. Psychology is really an infant science. And so, when the topic of like moral responsibility comes up, it's hard for me to say whether or not people are responsible. Ultimately, I don't think I know. Again, they could be, they could not be. And and because if I'm assuming causation, sorry, if I'm assuming causation, but I don't know what is causing people's behavior, then I cannot know whether they're morally responsible or not. I think that has little to do with like our emotions or our penal system and whatnot, because if you massacred 50 preschoolers, well, we should throw you in the prison for the rest of your life, because so you don't massacre 50 more preschoolers. It's just a simple, it has nothing to do with responsibility at that point. It's just get you off the streets. And we will praise people who do things we like, criticize people for doing things we don't like, because we're emotional as well as rational creatures, and we have emotional responses to various stimuli. And the basis of morality, I guess, kind of being Humean again, the basis of morality is pretty much sentiment. Now people share some sentiments in common, so you could argue there is like some shared morality, I guess, in some ways, but that's a conversation for another day. It's like we're still going to praise if someone gets us a really nice gift for Christmas. We're still going to say thank you, we really appreciate it. We're still going to probably feel grateful for that person, feel love for that person, because, again, it's what we do. It's the kind of creatures we are. In that way, it is okay that we can't know whether or not we have free will. I don't think our life changes that much. And I'm not saying it doesn't matter. Because I think we should have these conversations. I think it's a worthwhile discussion. But I don't think we can expect an answer to the problem. So I think the rational thing to do is to say, we don't know. And just sort of live your life. Now, I don't want to be misconstrued. Like I said, I'm not saying this to advocate compatibilism, because I'm not claiming that determinism and free will are compatible, because I don't know the universe is deterministic, and I have no good conception. I have no good definition of free will. I think it's basically an intelligible proposition. I had something else. I'm thinking. Wheels are turning. Yeah, I think I lost it. Anyway, so yeah, I'm not advocating for compatibilism. And I've come to the conclusion that I was being dogmatic unnecessarily dogmatic about the topic. I was making statements that I cannot possibly know or prove when I was advocating for hard determinism. But actually, oh yeah, I think I remember what I was going to say. Again, I am not trying to use this as in, I'm not trying to advocate, I'm not trying to do the trick that a lot of people do when I talk about free will, which is to say, well, it doesn't matter because we think we have it. Like they end up defending free will because it's a hard question, like basically almost out of intellectual laziness, like just because it's a hard problem to solve. So again, I'm not doing it doesn't matter why are we talking about this at all sort of thing. Because again, I think saying it doesn't matter whether or not we have, like, it doesn't matter. I think that just usually ends up to people giving lazy defenses of free will. So like the late Christopher Hitchens talked about, I think he said, he had some witticism, I'm forced to have free will or something. And again, funny line, good line. Hitchens is always a brilliant in that regard, but that's not really an argument. If he's trying to say we're just forced to make choices, again, no one's denying that. Whether you're a metaphysical, libertarian, a compatibilist, and a hard determinist, everyone agrees you make choices. It's just a question of whether you're dictating those choices, whether the causation or the control or the agency comes from you. Then you have someone like Noam Chomsky, who's usually a very brilliant man. His take on free will is terrible. It's really lazy. It's horrible. Because what he does is, in other like bits of his philosophy and science, he talks about how we can't rely on our experience as proof that the world is a certain way. And yet he relies on that very experience to demonstrate that we have free will, because he quotes Bertrand Russell as, I guess, saying, there are certain things that we just know demonstrably through experience, and we just know we have free will, just because we can sort of feel it or experience it. Again, I don't know why he has that contradiction in his philosophy or his worldview. It makes no sense. Just because we feel like we have free will, and Sam Harris would argue, we don't even feel like we have free will. So he argues that the illusion of free will is an illusion. But even if we do, it doesn't prove anything. It doesn't prove we have free will. It doesn't prove we don't have free will. Actually, it doesn't really give us any information. Now, again, it's a phenomenon that we might want to explain why we have any sense of agency at all. If we do, it doesn't prove, the matter one way or the other. And we can't say it does. If we assume we have we feel we have agency, then we have to explain the phenomenon. It could be totally disconnected from, anything outside of our our programming, so to speak. I mean, maybe, animals are just programmed with a certain sense of agency because they wouldn't do anything otherwise. Like, I don't know. Maybe there's probably some biological reason for a sense of agency, if it exists. Yeah. I haven't talked about metaphysical libertarianism. And I guess I haven't talked about metaphysical libertarianism because I don't really I take metaphysical libertarianism even less seriously than I take compatibilism. I mean, I guess they're not fence sitters, so unlike the compatibilists, so that's a point in their favor. And I don't like fence sitters. But again, you just you can throw the same arguments back at them. I mean, because I get the sense a lot of metaphysical libertarians are theists. They believe that God gave us some freedom separate from, I don't know, the causation of that we see in like the physical world. Again, that's just something we don't know. We don't know there's a God, a deity, or a being, a creator that infused freedom into us. You can try to prove that, I guess. You can try to demonstrate that if you want to. It's a hypothesis, like any other, but you don't know it. Nobody knows it, actually. And they're a liar if they think they know it. Or deluded, whichever. Because nobody knows that God exists or not. But yeah, you would have to prove somehow or demonstrate somehow, where we got this agency or where we got this freedom. What is freedom? In the free will sense. I don't know, actually. And I don't think anyone else does either. So again, to say we're both free and not free or semi-free, everyone's up a creek without a paddle until you tell me what free is. And I really don't know. I want someone to tell me. I'd love to debate people about this, actually. I'd love to bring people on this channel to debate, whether you're metaphysical libertarian, compatibilist, determinist. You can come my way if you so please. I don't know what freedom means in any metaphysical sense. If freedom means the ability to do other than we did, we have no way of knowing if we have that because we can't undo what we did. If freedom means, you just have some minor form of control, pardon me for my voice cracking, like you were, again with the drunk driving case, like, if you're a rational adult, then, you can't avoid drinking and driving, we assume. Rather, you have the capacity not to. I'll put it like that. You have the capacity to not drink and drive if you're just a pretty typical rational adult. Now, would I say you have freedom in that case? I mean, I guess if that is how we're defining freedom, then the compatibilists I would have to concede. I would have to concede that the fence sitters are right. But we don't know where, again, we don't know where the control ends and the lack of control begins. again, for practical purposes, will still lock you up if you're a rational adult who drinks and drives. Will still punish you or reward you if you do X, Y, or Z. Because in society, we just assume people have a degree of agency. I guess maybe you wouldn't have. I don't know if you could have society without us. Maybe you have to assume that to have society. But we don't know that you have this little bit of degree of agency, even though everything else is deterministic or determined. So I can't say it's freedom, I guess, that can lead a rational, healthy adult to drink and drive or to not drink and drive. Again, when I'm just going out and about, I'll make assumptions, but assumptions aren't knowledge. And I don't know that I have the freedom. I've never drinking and drive. I've never driven a vehicle after drinking alcohol. I'm too afraid to. I don't really even like driving much, to be honest. Am I exercising my freedom? It's like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. I guess I'm exercising a capacity of mine. But I don't know if... I guess the compatibilist is saying capacity and freedom are the same things. But I don't know. I don't see how that squares away. I don't see what the evidence is that we have to, that has to be the definition of free. Right? We could have capacities, and we could, in a deterministic universe, in an entirely deterministic universe, we could still have capacity. We would still probably have capacities, or we still could at least. So, just because we have capacities doesn't prove freedom. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Sorry for this being a bit rambly. I think I got my point across, though. So yeah, thank you for listening. Again, if you're interested in talking to me about this subject, feel free to shoot me a message or leave a comment or something. Otherwise, take care.